Hi, my name is Jade Rycroft, and today I will be focusing on love-obsessed villains, heroes in their own minds. When we think of villains, typically we picture monsters or other sinister figures plotting in the shadows. But some of the scariest villains out there are actually the ones that believe they're heroes, especially when it comes to love. Today, we're exploring the love-obsessed villain character. Those who think they deserve the protagonist's affection and become dangerous when that love is denied.
We are focusing on Gaston from the film Beauty and the Beast and briefly touching on Hans from the movie Frozen.
These villains don't seek to destroy the world or gain any power. They simply seek to win someone's heart. Entitlement, obsession, and control twist their love into something dangerous, which is where the villain part comes in. There's a clear divide between how these villains see themselves and how the townspeople / other characters in the film may also see them, and how the protagonist and the audience see the character. At first, Gaston appears to be the perfect catch. He is admired by everyone in the village, and everyone loves him, as seen in the song Gaston. But Belle's rejection shifts and changes his ego. According to the article, Beauty is the Beast, Gaston's entire motivation is simple: marry Belle. Yet, that desire, when mixed with his sense of entitlement, makes him so dangerous that the movie justifies his death, something rare in children's films. End quote. In addition to this, scholar Eunice Lee, in her essay, Curing Beauty's Stockholm Syndrome, describes Gaston as, quote, embodying toxic masculine ideas, dominance, aggression, and emotional entitlement. His refusal to accept Belle's rejection drives him towards increasingly villainous acts, accumulating in him leading an attack on the Beast's castle. Meanwhile, Benjamin Solis points out in his article, We Are the Beast, that, quote, Gaston's toxic behaviors are praised by the town people, showing how easily society can normalize destructive masculinity. In Gaston's mind, he's simply fighting for what's rightfully his, Belle's love, end quote. And throughout the film, we see Gaston kind of make comments alluding to this point where he says that she's the most perfect woman in town, and him being the most perfect male in town basically gives him that sense of that is his and that belongs to him. Love-obsessed villains like Gaston aren't just arrogant. They reflect real psychological patterns. Scholar Robin M. Kowalski, in her article on Narcissism and Stalking, explains that obsessive individuals often cannot respect the boundaries of people they claim to love. Rejection doesn't end their pursuit, it intensifies it. Now, I'm not saying that Gaston is a stalker, but I do think that throughout the film he does show a lot of displays of narcissism, which is why I found this article especially relevant in terms to his relationship with Belle. And also, building on that point, Wyatt Moss-Wellington's research on villains and obsessive love shows us that fictional characters like Gaston fuel audiences' fears because they distort their views of love. What Gaston feels isn't true love, it's a need to validate himself through Belle and make himself feel more perfect because he sees her as beautiful and thinks that adding that beauty into his life will kind of take him to the next level in the situation. Hans from Frozen follows a similar but even more evil path. In the beginning of the film, he plays the perfect prince for Anna. Selfless, romantic, he even sings that song with her, Love is an Open Door, to really show her what love is. But as Peter Wolf describes in his article, Why Gaston and Hans Are the Scariest Villains, he states that, quote, both Gaston and Hans view the protagonist not as people, but as prizes. Hans seeks Anna's hand to seize power, and love is his weapon of choice. For a little bit of background, Hans does eventually turn on Anna, stating that he just wanted to love her and marry her to then use her power and her claim to the throne as his own. So that is kind of what this article is talking about in that quote. And when Hans reveals his betrayal, it feels shocking because just like Gaston, he hides his villainous behind a mask of charm and love until the very end, when both of the villains are seen through their actions, what they really are and what they think that they deserve. Both Gaston and Hans reveal how society often enables toxic behaviors. According to Sculos, quote, Gaston's traits were celebrated by his community, strength and dominance, even as they led to violence. The warning these characters offers that charm can easily mask control and obsession can be mistaken for love, end quote. Gaston even uses this charm and this love to gather the whole community to go against the innocent beast and the end of the film and the climax scene, which does eventually lead to his death. But it definitely sees how the society kind of unites around these villain characters. In the end, the love-obsessed villain teaches us that real love is not about ownership or validation, it's about trust, freedom, and respect. Just because someone believes that they're the hero does not make them one, especially if their version of love requires force or stripping the other party of their choice. Remember that real love is about choice, not control, and I think this is an interesting study to dive into Disney films, which typically surround characters that are geared towards younger audiences. And I think it's interesting how these movies kind of took a step back to a big societal issue happening with toxic masculinity, and how these films kind of show that toxic masculinity does not win, as both of these villains do not have happy endings. And spoiler alert, Beauty and the Beast ends up with Gaston falling to his death, and the movie Frozen ends up with Hans getting shipped back to his country and then shoveling manure. So it is clear that toxic masculinity does not lead to happy endings, and as these films show us, true love comes from mutual respect, care, and all of the things that lead to a Disney happily ever after. Thank you guys for listening.